Hello and welcome to SGN Tech Forum. So today I'm bringing you another Raspberry Pi video. You may ask why another Raspberry Pi video. We have seen how to install Ubuntu, how to install Kali Linux, and how to set up Raspberry Pi, right? Uh, so this video is different because this video we are going to talk about Raspberry Pi OS and try to understand why Raspberry Pi OS is important, right? Why not we can just live with Unix and Linux distributions, all right? So we'll get those answers in this video. So let's get started. This is Raspberry Pi official website, raspberrypi.org software, and as you can see here, there are a couple of softwares available to download. For my purposes, I have so you can use some sort of like uh, imager. You can have an agent which can help you choose and download right image, or you can do it manually. So I have downloaded manually for my Pi. Okay, and this is what I have downloaded: Raspberry Pi OS with desktop and recommended software. So it's a full suite of software. You really don't need to like fetch and uh, install all the services by handpicking them. So it has all recommended software inbuilt. So when you download, download is about 1 GB, but then that's a zip file, and when it expand around 9 GB. So when you are planning for your install, choose the storage or SD card uh, properly. So if you chose only 8 or 16 GB, that may not be sufficient because 9 GB or 10 GB is the software size itself. So I would recommend having a minimum of 32 GB of SD card. You can go beyond and depend what kind of Pi you are using, right? So once you download this, I'm not going to go over how to prepare SD card. That is covered in another video on my channel, so you can watch that. Just flash it, insert it in the Pi, and boot it, right? Once you boot that, you will be presented with this screen, and I'm going to play a recording of that initialization, Raspberry Pi initialization, to understand what all we need to do and how we can go inside deep inside the configuration initial configuration and enable all those GPIO pins which we are going to use for our project. Like if you want to connect a camera, if you want to connect um, actuator, or if you want to connect something sonic sensors, those GPIO pin play a huge role connecting those sensors and actuators, and you can enable those GPIO. They are disabled by default, so you can enable them, you can configure them software using software uh, and Raspberry Pi library, and that is why Raspbian OS is very important. The things around what you can do uh, with your pins and IoT kind of application, they are all inbuilt with Raspbian OS because all the developer community is focused and developing those kind of tool set. So let's initialize our Raspberry Pi. All right, I'm going to play this video a little bit faster to save some time. All right, so this is my HDMI, sorry, one my monitor connected to Pi using HDMI, and that's why I'm capturing this from front camera. That's why its resolution is a little bit uh, lower. So you can tell you welcome to the Raspberry Pi desktop, the same software. Set your country code, language, time zone, just like any operating system, right? Even your laptop, when you buy laptop, then you have to initialize and you set up these parameters. So that's what we are doing. It's a one-time job. You need to connect a mouse, a keyboard, and use HDMI cable to connect to the monitor. But that's all one-time job. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to enable remote access capabilities like SSH or VNCs, so that we don't need the uh, extra peripheral, and we can access our Pi remotely over the network. All right. So now, as you can see, it's creating. I have set the demography, and now it's asking me to set a password. So the default user is Pi here, and it is asking you to set up the password. So there is no default password to start with. but there is a default user called Pi. Okay, looks like I entered the mismatch password. Let me try one more time. Next. So you can choose how your desktop should look like. Do you want a border or no? Right. So, and then you set up your network. And this is beautiful. I have some trouble when I was using Kali Linux or Ubuntu getting the WLAN 0 or the Wi-Fi interface configured. But Raspbian Pi OS is so perfect. It detect the driver, since this is native to that Raspberry Pi, right? These scripts are very perfect. It can scan the network and it can help me connect to my network on day one or day zero. It's not that I need to get the Ethernet working first and then do go and um, edit my scripts, WLAN scripts, and then get connected to Wi-Fi network. No, on day one, very easily I can connect to my Wi-Fi network so no need to depend on Ethernet interface. Obviously, you'll need Ethernet for various other reasons. Okay. Failed to connect network again. Fat finger. Maybe I typed my password wrong. So let me try password one more time, and it should connect this time. So this is like initialization things we are doing. We have set up the demography, like language, time zone. Then we have selected the network. So now this is in my network. I already got received an IP address. Now it is asking if I want to do a software update. We have downloaded the image, but it's always recommended to fetch the latest software from repo, and that's what it is doing. And Raspberry Pi OS, this one, with recommended tools, it's a pretty heavy one. It's already 9 GB, and so you can tell how many packages it has, right? So now it is going to go ahead and read all the update list, fetch it, compare the versions, and then pull the incremented ones. So it can take a little bit of time. I'm going to pause the video also. You may not realize, but I'll pause the video while it does this update software check and download, right? So that we can just keep the length short. It's downloading all the updates. So it read the update, it compare the packages from local install to repo, then it's downloaded them, and now it is actually deploying those packages or installing. It seems pretty quick because I pause in between. Okay, so now your Raspberry Pi is now set up and ready to go. Since we have made an update, it's recommended to make a restart so that all packages can take effect. And now you can see as my Raspberry Pi is booting, no HDMI connection. That is the why monitor is complaining, right? It doesn't find any HDMI signal. Pi is back fairly quick, started booting, so HDMI signal should come back up. And here we are presented with the Raspberry Pi desktop, right? It is already connected to network, since while initialization we have done that. Let's log on to terminal and see what is the IP address and other details. Okay, as you can see, I am connected to my home SSID, and if config, I am seeing the IP address 192.168.1.143. That's a home network, right? Can I want to see if I have the DNS properly, which obviously it will receive as a part of DSCP. So we have DNS. We can go outside. That means we can reach out to internet, pinging a Google address. This is the home path, and this is the some default directories I have. Right now, let's check what is the remote services looks like. Systemctl SSH. Okay, so it's loaded, but it's inactive. Okay, so We can load service in Unix way, but I would like to do sudo raspi config dash config and show you this screen. This screen has a lot of knobs which can interest you, and we will go through it and see what are the capabilities available here and what are some of the must things what you need to do here. So we have changed the password. We are already connected in wireless LAN. We can change the host name. So let's go ahead and change the host name so that remotely when I access, I know that okay, this is the Raspberry Pi because I have 5 or 6 Raspberry Pi sitting in my desk on my desk, right? So let's change the host name. Okay, so yes, there are like general housekeeping kind of things, right? Um, which I think we are not going to change it. Then we have password. We already set the password, boot, splash string, power LED, all those things. All right. Would like to show splash string in on boot? Yes, yes. So this is how you can enable. You can just say yes or no and then enter. Then resolution, what kind of resolution you want. The default resolution according to monitor is good. For me, the third important is option is very important. Interface options, where it's your all the GPIO pins and remote services sets. So as you can see, would you like SSH server to be enabled? Yes, that's what we want. We want to have access this remotely. So SSH is enabled. Uh, we are going to connect camera, but let's enable VNC before. VNC is also used for remote access. Okay, so we have SSH and VNC enabled. Then we are going to planning to connect camera. So let's enable camera GPIO, enable SPI GPIO, which is sensor and other services, right? Okay. So this is very important because you make start connecting your sensors and actuator on your GPIO, and then you find only to find that it's not working or the library is not available because these pins are disabled, and hence those capabilities are not available to you. That is why I wanted to show you this configuration: sudo raspi dash config, and you will be in this screen. All right. So feel free to play around and see and explore all the options, right? I'm not going to go into everything. I'm just walking you through on very high level here. So based on your requirement, you can enable and disable services in um, config, Raspberry config. Okay, let's get out of here. Let's not spend much time. Just exploring the same services here, different options. Okay, finish. And when you finish making changes, please reload so that checking settings can take effect. All right, so it's reloaded, settings are on, and now I should be able to um, see SSH services and log in using SSH services. As you can see, SSH is on, and I am able to see this locally. I'll show you in a moment. All right, so this is all I wanted to show you here. Let's go back and talk about the pins which we have enabled, right? Raspberry Pi GPIO pin out. All right. So what is a GPIO? If you are wondering what is a GPIO, okay, let me show you the circuits, and you can see here. I'm sorry, I was not prepared for this, but as you can see on your Raspberry Pi, motherboard, you have this pins setting. These are all GPIO, and this is what it is numbered: 40 GPIO pins. They are numbered on board. That's what you see: one, two, three, four. They are, so there are two ways you can read those pins: onboard number and BCM numbers. What is BCM numbers? Broadcom Communication Manager. So they can be. So when you do make connections, it tells you that what you are going to use. Are you going to use a board number, or you are going to use BCM number? It depends on your script or your program. So these are the different pins and their significance. Like if you want to supply a power, maybe you want to connect uh, a GPIO powered fan for your Raspberry Pi, you should use 5 volt power and ground. Okay, a little bit of electronics, but it's always good to know about all these pins before you start connecting any sensors and actuator. All right, so very handy site. I'm going to paste this link in description. And now I started. If you're wondering that, okay, what is Raspberry Pi? I never worked on this, so how I will start? Is it a Unix? Is it Windows? Is it Mac? So here is a cheat sheet for you. When I looked into at this cheat sheet first, I realized that this is actually Unix, right? So another version of like a Unix Linux. So if you are a Unix Linux guy, you can easily get started without any additional training here. Okay. What is important here is GPIO library. GPIO library, the when you start connecting your sensor, actuator, camera, you will be working with those pins, and this is our library. Import RPI, GPIO as GPIO, and then this is how you can say that, okay, I want to use BCM pins, or I want to use board pin number, and all those things you can use in your Python script. I'm hoping you will use Python to deliver your project or work with your sensor and actuator. So this is a very important library, and we will talk more about it when we connect our the camera and sonic sensors. All right, I hope you found it useful, and if you have any questions, feel free to write in description section, comment section, and I'll paste all these two links: GPIO pinout and cheat sheet, in description. So thank you for watching. Thank you.